allow that the Lord can place whatever that he wants on this earth, and we cannot restrain or question him. We saw that Jesus Christ told his disciples how Lazarus could be raised, but it was giving them a new definition and new terminology by which was beating the mind of the disciples, telling about Lazarus' death as sleep. And so they could not catch up until he told them plainly that Lazarus is dead. And then he added, I thank God that I am not there. But for you, that when we get to know that Lazarus is dead, then you may believe. So all these things he was doing to affirm the kind of faith and the kind of person they are walking with. And so they're getting closer onto the tomb of Lazarus. They've now come closer to the village, but he has not yet entered the village. Verse number 18 is where we are now going to tread on to finish the chapter. So because it's a long chapter, I would love to read and explain it at the same time so we can have time also to pray. Verse number 18, chapter 11, verse number 18. Bethany was less than 2 miles from Jerusalem, and many Jews had come to Martha and Mary to comfort them in the loss of their brother. When Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went out to meet him, but Mary stayed at home. Lord, Martha said to Jesus, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But I know that even now God will give you whatever you ask. This is a demonstration of what these people have really endowed themselves to be. They prove over and over that staying with the Lord, studying from his feet, should not make you wander away, but always put the kind of affirmation, your strength within. Even if it is the weakest faith, they demonstrate it by telling that we know that whatever you ask of the Father, he will give it to you. 23, Jesus said to her, your brother will rise again. So the comfort comes in. Your brother will rise again. Jesus is speaking on the present tense. Listen to Martha's answers. Martha answered, I know he will rise again in the resurrection at the end. So now Martha also places it at the end. That's the participle, present participle. Jesus is speaking about the now. Is also speaking about which will follow in the future. Then Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me will live, even though he dies, and whoever lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this? Here now it comes to personal way of a communication, just to tell him that you need to step up your faith. So I'm asking you, do you believe that? This is the most remarkable statement that every Christian must follow. So there's no need of us. I say that when your loved one dies, it's painful. But we shouldn't come into the place where we will be like the unbelievers, where we put all and spend all our entirety on crying rather than doing something profitable. We mourn and we try to show to the world that we are in mourning. That's good. But making the perplexed statements and other aspect of it that tells us that where is our faith? It saddens God. It is expedient that one man should live, but one man should die. So we have to always have the preparation in our heart to know that there is death always as a price for us to shorten our chances of getting closer unto our Maker. So there's no need for us to weep and then to wallow in any kind of mischief. So Jesus Christ corrected her and said, do you believe this? I'm talking about now. Do you believe me now or you believe me later? If your phone is on speaker, please remove it from speaker, please. Then Jesus said, yes, Lord. She told him, I believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God, who was to come into the world. So she has really affirmed who this Jesus is and has even gone down to give Jesus a title. Verse 28, and after she had said this, she went back and called her sister Mary aside. The teacher is here, she said, and is asking for you. When did Jesus ask for Mary? We don't know the deep of the conversation. But supposedly, Martha knew that the only thing that satisfied Mary is being in the presence of Jesus. So the comfort was that she was also trying to comfort Mary that this time I've seen him and you need to hear what he's saying also. Sometimes in the midst of our comfort, we can also set a time aside and just comfort others also. Even though we are those that are being affected, we can stand up on our Christian principle and say that, what shall I say then? Shall I go on mourning? Shall I go on weeping? Shall I become perplexed and ask for questions that I can never have it and will never come to the conclusion, because he holds the future and he knows what good it is for man to be taken into his rest, because this is what really people will see from us if we are Christians. It is when the loved one dies. The way we act will make and comfort people. I've seen and heard a lot that when you go into a home of mourning, and then they said, oh my goodness, oh, the woman is in comfort. You can see there is the joy of the Lord upon that home. You went there and the woman was even comforting us. She who has lost the husband, she who has lost the son, she who has lost the child is still having the comfort within her. And that is the most advanced stage that we can. Beloved, remember, the 2/3 of the gospel that is talked about, the narration about Jesus Christ, where he has been, what he sleeps, what he does, and everything. But the chapter 11 going, from chapter 13 going, you will see that it is about the last days of Jesus Christ on earth. The Bible spoke about the whole gospel. It was really about the last 8 days of Jesus Christ on earth. Was being spoken of. More than 27 chapters were devoted for his last days on earth. 89 chapters are devoted for his entire ministry. But in 27 we'll go into his death and then resurrection. It means that is the most powerful point by which we should it. It's like someone going to Washington and then the person begin to tell you the monuments. I looked at it, I went to this place, I went to the other places, and then you are listening. Then you can see that the person is now laying emphasis on going to the White House. It is almost like now the person is beginning to tell you the details of his journey. You can now notice that His purpose of going to Washington is to see the White House. And right here, the person's emphasis is on the White House. So it will be some disservice if I begin to talk and make that White House to become very light in the description of how he went on to his journey. Beloved, it will be a disservice if we can talk about the gospel and then we will never pronounce the death of Jesus Christ and the resurrection. We have to talk about his death, burial, and resurrection. That is the most thing. That's what we call the gospel. Now you know what I'm talking about. If we make all music and we call it gospel, if the music doesn't contain the death of Jesus Christ, it doesn't contain the resurrection of Jesus Christ, it is none to be called a gospel. Every song that you sing about God can never be gospel until it has this special ingredient of the death, burial, and resurrection. Pick up the music from the street and see how many songs that have and bear the death and the resurrection of Christ. You will just see that it is not even produced about, not even to any tune. It is lost. But everyone who makes music call it the gospel. Sad how we have really lost our emphasis. Our emphasis must be upon the dead. So John's gospel, you can see that the chapter 11 is the last public ministry of Jesus Christ. From this point on, Jesus Christ started putting himself out there that he will never be in public. He withdraw his services because he is preparing himself to go to the cross. And you can see this is his biggest public ministry. All the miracles and all things, from this point on, you will see that Jesus is preparing to go to the cross. So we are in the chapter 11, and we say is the finality. Yet we have the 12, 13, 14 up to chapter 21, where we have to go through. If this is the last, chapter 12 should be the final of this. But you will understand that this is the last of Jesus' public ministry. By definition, I wanted to tell you that it is very, very important. So now here Jesus said, as Mary also went in and then called the sister aside, when the Jews who, verse 31, when the Jews who had been with Mary in the house, comforting her, noticed her, how quickly she got up and went out and followed her, supposing she was going to the tomb to mourn there. When Mary reached the place where Jesus was and saw him, she fell at his feet and said, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. The two people coming to the Lord, their approach is different. One stood and one fell. You see, in worship, we always fall at the feet of Jesus Christ. We yada God. When you are yadering God, you do what? You fall prostrate and then you begin to worship him. You have no chance to stand on your feet and just worship. They worship when he began. So this woman who came, the Martha, just came in and stood and asked, Lord, if you had been here. But look at the posture of the sister. Fell at the feet. So, beloved, the only person that can turn the heart of Jesus every morning is the one who goes in worship. Worship is the only thing that will turn the heart of Jesus. So the two presented themselves, but one was in worship. So here is it. She fell and then asked the same question. But let's listen to how Jesus Christ proceeded with this thing. Verse number 32. When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who had come along with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in the spirit and troubled. Where have you laid him? He asked. So Jesus never went on talking about his resurrection, talking about the same method, but now he's moved and he's always ready to go into action. Come and see, Lord. They replied. Then Jesus wept. Jesus wept because it is all what they came in for. All what they are talking about is death. They never trusted that once the Lord is there, the end of death has come. Then the Jews said, see how he loved him. Yes, this is what has been the nature of human being. Let your husband die, let your sister die, let your mother die, and you don't cry. Woe unto you. They will really insult you. To the extent that one thing I picked up when I went to Nigeria with my brother Chris when he lost the mother. There was a tradition that really picked my conscience, and I said, whoa, this is something new. Not knowing it isn't any time. This woman has died for more than 2 months. The son has just left here to go to Nigeria for burial, not knowing there is a portion where he has to go to the where the mother comes from, the place of her birth and where she was originally before she was married into the husband's home. So at that, there is a tradition that our brother Chris must gather some strength and go and report that the woman is dead. Where were they the last 2 months? They knew that the woman is dead. But now they have to see from their eyes whether this man is crying and having the attitude of showing that he is in mourning before they will accept him. And it's a great challenge to see how people have to go with him. And they have a whole lot of tradition. I won't go into details. But it set my mind over this scripture. The moment they see that you are mourning, they say that you love. So if you become very strong-headed like me, and you don't cry so much, it will be almost like you don't love your loved ones. Beloved, if you go into such a funeral, don't ever make any kind of comments like this towards a sister who is becoming resilient and becoming strong, and never say that she never loves the husband or the loved one. Never make that comment, because it is a human inference, has nothing to do with a deep sorrow that somebody is going to say Jesus loved him. Verse 37, but some of them said, could not he who opened the eyes of the blind man have kept this man from dying? They're going back to the chapter 10, where Jesus Christ made this blind born blind. They are still referring and having a shadow over. That means that it was a bigger issue for someone to come out from birth, to come out from this kind of blindness. And they were having this reference all over him. And so it was almost like sarcastically, they were just mocking. He says that is this. This shouldn't have even happened under his watch. Verse number 38, Jesus, once more deeply moved, came to the tomb. It was a cave with a stone laid across the entrance. This tells you how wealthy these people were. Martha, Mary, and then Lazarus. They were not poor. For you to have a graveside with a tombstone road, because it's like a pocket. When you go into the Holy Land, when people die, they place them, when you are not rich, they just, carve a place and put you in almost like a pigeonhole. So you will be in the pigeonhole, so you will go, you see almost like a wall, and you will see people that have died, and your loved ones will only be with a small hole there. That's how they place dead bodies. But if for you to buy a tomb, and then it will be rolled away, it tells you how wealthy that this, it's uncommon that you will see it only when the person is wealthy. The person has money. If you don't have money, you can't buy ground, because ground was like a commodity over there. Now listen. And so take away the stone, he said. But Martha, but Lord, said Martha, the sister of the dead man, but this time there is a bad odor, for he has been there 4 days. So here it tells you that this woman still insists on the future, not the now. Even Jesus corrected and asked, do you still believe that I am the resurrection? She left. She never said anything. She went in and called her sister. She is still backed upon the future, not now. Beloved, how many times have you asked God something and in your own inclination you believe that it's not going to be possible today? It is only going to be possible the future. When you ask God about anything, don't set your mind upon the natural inferences. Make sure that you will always have the chance of what? Allowing God to become boldened in the very things of God. Now here is it. Now Jesus Christ comes in, and then this woman said that it's been 4 days. Verse number 40, Jesus said to, did I not tell you that if you believed, you would see the glory of God? You see, Jesus never forget his words. He spoke to him, and he told him, I am the resurrection. And now you are coming back and repeating the same thing as tomorrow. Whenever we pray, we should have confidence that the Lord is able to do. If he did for someone 8 days, if he did for someone 30 days, if he did for someone a year after, beloved, don't ever use human inferences in reference unto God. Always give God the elbow room to operate on his own. He doesn't work according to the plans of what he has done yesterday. He only works according to the plans that fits within him. Meanwhile, what you are praying for, you wish that God performs it now. But your inclination, your whole thought is about tomorrow or the next week. Let's give God the elbow room for him to operate. So they took away the stone. Then Jesus looked up and said, Father, I thank you that you have heard me. I knew that you always hear me. But I said this in the benefit of the people standing here, that they may believe that you sent me. You see, in very actuality, this is not a prayer. This is a relationship. You see, prayer must always bring the very fact of your relationship. Prayer is nothing than relationship. If you believe that God, you just not go willing and throwing questions and doubting, if you don't do it for me, I will stop. It's not relationship. When your prayer tends to be relationship, it becomes so good. And I don't know who made the symbol of praying and closing our eyes and telling us. Most pastors even tell us on the pulpit, hey, let's close our eyes and pray. But in this posture, you can see that every time Jesus Christ is speaking to the Father, he lifts up his eyes, and then he will watch the Father in heaven. And that could be one of the greatest access that we can now change our way of thinking, so that our prayer will be looking up. The Bible says that I will look up unto the hills, from whence cometh my help. My help cometh from the Lord, who makes the heaven and earth. He will not suffer thy foot to be moved. He that keepeth Israel shall neither slumber nor sleep. Behold, the Lord is thy keeper. The Lord is the shade upon the right hand. The sun shall not smite by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord shall preserve your going out and your coming in. You see, you must have the confidence of lifting up. It is only in relationship that you can lift yourself up onto someone. You have to build a kind of a fortitude on building on relationship. Prayer is nothing than relationship. Prayer, it's not about rattling. Prayer endows relationship. Don't think that you can be in any other angle of relationship and then receive the result. God only listens to those that he relates to. You call him our Father. It's a relationship. It's a darling something that God is now introducing here. And he talked about the relationship, and it's just like that. Not that it's not the first time you're hearing me. I know that you always hear me always. Is this a prayer? This is the time that you will just have the chance of speaking in tongues and using all kind of acclimatation type of recitals. Oh, you are the Holy One. Hey, the Lord Tabu Korea Taya. You are the Kaya. Here he says that, look, relationship have been built already. And that is what I am just repeating. When he said this, Jesus cried out a loud voice, Lazarus, come out. The dead man came out, his hands and feet wrapped with stripes of linen and a cloth around his face. You see, look at every resurrection. This is what we call restoration. It's not resurrection. But you see, but then that says we can see that he has the body was raised, so we can call it resurrection. But if you look into totality, what Jesus did and how Jesus came, that's why the Bible called him the firstborn of resurrection. So he was the only one that came out in that victory, that sound of victory. But what Lazarus and others, the young girl, the young man that was going to be buried, all those who came out of that kind of death, kind of what Paul and Peter raised the whole dead, they never call it resurrection, it was restoration. But the resurrection will bring in a new kind of era. We will never have the same body. We'll have a different body that will never die again. Because Lazarus died, the girl died, the young man died again. It was a restoration. So here is it that we can now debunk the idea that, Jesus was not the first to be resurrected. No, he's the firstborn of resurrection. So you can now understand why we call this thing restoration rather than. Then Jesus said to them, take off the grave clothes and let him go. So when Jesus set you free, you are free. There should not be the dead past to hold you up. All dead things must really go. So when you look at the whole chapter, from here on, the people started thinking to plot to kill Jesus Christ. I wanted to jump on to the verse number 54. Therefore, Jesus no longer moved about publicly among the Jews. Instead, he withdrew to a region near the desert, to a village called Ephraim, where he stayed with his disciples. When it was almost time for the Jewish Passover, many went up from the country to Jerusalem to their ceremonial cleansing before the Passover. They kept looking for Jesus, and as they stood in the temple area, they asked one another, what do you think? Isn't the coming of the feast to the feast at all? Is he not coming to the feast at all? But the chief priests and the Pharisees had given orders that if anyone found out where Jesus was, he should report it so that they might arrest him. So now from this point on, Jesus started withdrawing from public services, public work anymore. So now he's going to devote his time, the 8 days, towards the coming of where he will go to the cross. And John spent entirely the whole book processing what happened the 8 days of Jesus' ministry. And he used a chunk of them to describe it. Everything was a picket, small here, small chapter here, small verses there. But when it gets to the 8 days of the last days, we call it the last days of Jesus on earth, was more important than anything that John has described, because that contains the gospel, the death, the burial, and the resurrection. From this point on, Jesus withdrew, and he will never perform anything publicly. And that is exactly, beloved, we will just be talking about it, chapter 12, the next day. But it gives us the perspective to know what the mind of Jesus Christ, he is approaching his death. And my beloved, if the resurrection of these, when you read the other verses that I left out, it says some believed and some did not believe. Miracle will not change men. You remember Jesus said one time that Moses and Elijah are there. If they could not, and John the Baptist, they are there. If they could not hear them, they will not also hear anybody from the dead. So Jesus was saying that miracles can never change. When man makes up his determination, it's not about miracles. People chase miracles, but that tells you how shallow they are in believing in God. But if you are strong and you believe in God, whether there is miracle or not, you continue to worship and continue. How many people began on this line and they are not coming again because they thought that this is a place where you come in and you use God as a slot machine. Get your answers and then you go your way. So many people have proven many times, come on the line, prayed and fasted with them. Immediately the issues are gone. They never come on the line again because God knows the heart of man. Whether you are here to worship God or you are only coming in to get your issues solved. When the Bible is being explained, you don't want it. You want to go into prayer so that you will bring your chunk of a prayer list. But here it lies in the strength. Know God through His Word and be a seasoned person. Whether there is miracle or no miracle, we should not look in for miracles. We should look in for Christ, whose words will season us, because your life will be better and will be much better if you confess the word of faith, which is infallible. This is which is restored on you, and you will do exploit. May God help us, and may God always bring us so close that we will serve Him not through miracles alone, but through His word, even now and forevermore. Amen.